The next argument that we're going to be looking at is the Toulmin argument. This is best for nuanced arguments that require strong logical connections and detailed supports. I always think of the Toulmin argument as something that you would see in court, something that is you have one specific claim that you're defending and it needs to be super strong. As with all of my resources, if you need to, you can scan the QR code and you will have full access to this lecture-based presentation. When it comes to the Toulmin argument, your method of argumentation breaks down the reasoning into very key components. You are looking for clarity, you are looking for quality, and you are looking for persuasiveness. To do this, you'll make your big claim, you'll identify the grounds of that claim. You're going to warrant your reasoning, you're going to provide some backing, you're going to qualify your statement, and then of course you're going to refute any counter arguments that exist. So our thesis format for this is because evidence, claim is true. Although some may argue this, my rebuttal shows why my claim is still the strongest position. Realize again, this is because we're focusing on one specific claim. That is our ultimate goal. An example of this could be a tried and true argument that we see all throughout argumentative history, and that is, should schools require uniforms? The thesis, schools should implement uniform policies because they promote equity and reduce distractions, even though some argue they limit student expression. Now, if we want to prove this to be true, right, we need to really hammer home our points. We need to get as concise and clear as possible. In the introduction, you're going to notice if you're looking at other arguments, again, this is pretty consistent across most arguments. You're going to hook, you're going to give some background. Of course, please never forget that you need your thematic link in there and your inquiry question, because if you don't link those things together, you could potentially get a 0 on this essay. Lastly, you'll put your thesis statement in there. When it comes to the body paragraphs, you have one major section. Here's my claim, here's my argument that I'm making. Then you're going to focus on the grounds, meaning what is the evidence that you have supporting the claim, and you're going to have a lot of evidence. What is your warrant, the explanation of why this evidence supports that claim? You have to be very concise here. This is where you use your own wording. Your words are the ones that are providing the explanation. You are linking your grounds to your claim. The backing. Do you have any additional support? This is where, in this type of an argument, you add perspective. In other arguments, naturally, perspective kind of comes along with the different body paragraphs that you have. But for this argument, since you're really focusing on one specific thing, you build perspective by looking at different expert opinions. You look at the ways in which all of these different opinions come together to still prove that same point. So that means you get a doctor over here, you get maybe like 2 opinionated articles over here, maybe you get a researcher, a professor. You pull all of these things together to hammer home that point. And then you put any qualifier on there. And that means how are you going to address any limitations surrounding this? Because again, if you are building one large claim, you need to cover every aspect of that claim. Then the fun part of this is when you get to that counter argument and rebuttal, because obviously this is going to be a contentious type of a paper where you look at this counter argument and that counter argument could refute your entire essay that you have so far. So when you look at that, you need strong reasoning and evidence of how you can refute this, right? When you think about your rebuttal to this, you need to be strong and concise. You need to shut down that counter argument as soon as you can and with the best evidence that you have. Lastly, when we get to our conclusion, again, you'll restate a thesis, you'll summarize some key points, you'll explain the broader significance. Notice that explaining the broader significance kind of comes at the end here because you're bringing back into the limelight the problem itself, and then you're trying to invoke some more thought moving forward. You're trying to say, right, this is my claim, this needs to happen, so why don't we throw just a little bit more at the end to make our reader think? If you want a good example of this, in our 2020 released stimulus materials for the IWA, there is a pretty strong essay talking about or using the Toulmin method, and it has some scoring notes attached to it as well. So in your free time, I highly recommend taking a look at this IWA, giving it a quick read through. If you find anything that really kind of you like, maybe pull that out. Maybe pull some of that structure out and copy that structure for yourself. It's okay to copy the structure of that as long as you're applying it to your work and you're not stealing their ideas, you're just stealing the structure. So take a look at that. It should be a pretty good one to help you understand this Toulmin argument, as it's not the easiest to understand, but dang, when it's done correctly, it is a really, really top tier argument. That is our Toulmin argument.